Here in Colorado, I have been home composting for years to create rich, fertile soil for my garden. And I recommend that you compost too. It is so easy, and if you don't have a vegetable garden like I do, simply put the composted soil around your yard to enrich your landscape. So how does home composting help the environment? Composting is a great way to recycle the waste you generate at home. Food scraps and garden waste combined make up more than 28% of what we throw away in the United States. This is a significant burden on the environment. The average landfill cost in the United States was around $55 per ton in 2019. Composting at home allows us to divert some of that waste from landfills and turn it into something useful for our gardens. Typically, when organic matter decomposes, it is broken down by microorganisms that require oxygen. When compostable waste goes to the landfill, it gets buried under massive amounts of other trash, cutting off a regular supply of oxygen to the microorganisms, which causes a biogas to be created as a byproduct. This biogas is roughly 50% methane and 50% carbon dioxide, both of which are potential greenhouse gases. Landfills are the third largest source of human-generated methane emissions in the United States. So, let me show you how you can get started with home composting. When you have a small yard like mine and you're up against other people, the last thing you want to do is start a compost pile that gets stinky. Usually when you have a compost pile of food, you want it to be away from your house because it does get stinky at times, no matter what you do to kind of keep the smell down. And also to keep animals. I have raccoons and squirrel problems, and you want to keep them out of your compost also, or be attracted to it and not be able to get in, and so they start eating your vegetables and everything else. So what I do is I compost food that I know the smell will stay down. So I keep my old tea bags, and I actually break these apart because I'm not big on putting paper into my garden because of the glue factor of milling the paper. So unless they say on the bags that it's made with a certain kind of material, I will not put paper into my compost or into my garden. Back in the day we used to put newspaper into our garden, but you know, with all that ink and the glue and everything, it's actually a horrible thing to use when you're an organic gardener. So I have all this great tea, organic material basically, that's not going to waste and ending up in my trash can by just opening these up. So I kind of keep a bowl in my kitchen that I just keep throwing my spent herbal tea in, also any black tea that I drink. And I also put in here eggshells. Eggshells can either be put in the blender by themselves and mashed up and pulverized into a powder, and then you have a nice calcium-rich fertilizer that you can put into your dirt. So sometimes I keep the eggs separately. Sometimes I put them in here and I break them apart into small pieces with my hands so I can put them in the garden, and it actually keeps a lot of bugs and pests off my vegetables because they can't move over the broken shells. It's like shards of glass to them. And they also is hazardous to them to eat. Now another thing I put in here is onion skins. It's like putting leaves, they're basically leaves, into your compost pile. And I also do the garlic skins that I get off when I use garlic, because I do use a lot of garlic. And so you can see I've got some eggshells in here that I already broke up. And I also have coffee grounds in here. So any coffee grounds that I finish up, I don't put the filter in here. Again, I don't believe in putting any kind of paper into your garden or your compost because of the glue. So I have the coffee grounds in here. So I just use a regular lid. This is like an old Tupperware that I've had forever. And, you know, you can just, you know, put it, I mean, I don't even really put a vent in it at all because I empty it so often it really doesn't need it. And I just try to lift up the lid, you know, every couple of days to get some oxygen in there. So every time I empty it, I always try to rinse it out so it doesn't get smelly in my kitchen. And so I rinse it out and then I'll wipe it out with a paper towel and put the lid back on. Wood ash is an excellent source of lime, potassium, and trace elements for your garden. I use wood ash from my fire pit as a lightly scattered fertilizer. I also add some to my compost tumbler. During fall, don't forget the thousands of dry leaves you have in your yard. Those too are great to add to the garden and compost. Adding them will help a wet compost that has gotten a bit stinky. All in all, using a tumbler for composting, I have never had an issue with odor. So I wouldn't do anything like mums, or any kind of flower because they might be poisonous even when they're broken down to whatever you're going to use the dirt in. So I would stick to the vegetable and fruit scraps from your kitchen, coffee, ash, leaves, things like that. But I would stay away from things like flowers.